So what do you need to start a private practice? First thing is to be able to think about what is required to be in private practice. And the big requirement for most states and most places is that you have to be fully licensed in order to go into private practice. Now, that can vary from state to state. Some states will allow people that are working towards licensure, in other words, postmasters or postgraduate degree, being able to operate independently while being under supervision. So it varies from state to state. Some states require that you have at least a temporary license, which means that you will have had to gone to graduate school. You will have had to have passed the state board test, depending on which licensure you're working under, and then again being under supervision while you're working towards your full licensure. But once you have your full license, you're free to go out and hang your shingle, as people say. One thing to know about going into private practice that a lot of people really struggle with, and that is how do you get your first referrals to your practice? There's a lot of things that need to be set up as far as the operations of a private practice. Not going to go into that in this video, but you do need to have clear in your mind about where your referrals are going to come to you. You can't do the whole field of dreams thing of build it and they will come. You have to build it and then have people know about it, then they will come. And so that's where you need to think about how you're going to build your referral sources. It might be that you've got people that you know are going to refer to you, whether it's doctors or attorneys or chiropractors or healthcare professionals that generally refer to mental health private practice owners, or even if you're doing a physical therapy practice or a chiropractic practice or any other kind of private practice, you're going to have people referring to you. Now, one kind of shortcut to that is to get onto insurance panels. I've done another video about the pros and cons of accepting insurance or not, or just being purely private pay. So I'll refer you to that little short video about the pros and cons of that. But you need to be thinking about where your referral sources are going to come from, because setting up a private practice, that's pretty, I will say, pretty easy. But you've got to know what your referral sources are going to be in order to know that you're going to have that steady flow of income from the beginning. Now, here's the other thing about starting a private practice, is recognizing that most practices, it takes about 1 to 2 years to get fully established to where you've got that steady flow and that you've got a referral base and a client base that's going to be sustainable. So one of the things that I really encourage people to do in thinking about going into private practice is don't quit your day job too quickly. I would say continue to work where you're working, whatever that work might be, whether it's in the profession or out of the profession, and then just start part-time so that you're not completely dependent on that income in order to support yourself. In other words, you don't want to be a starving artist, so to speak, when you first go into private practice. That's how I did it in my practice. As I was still working for an agency, was able to start seeing clients in the evenings and on weekends. And then what I did with that, because I wasn't totally dependent on that income, is I would take that income that I created on the side, so to speak, and started saving that for when I did go into full-time private practice. And I really recommend that most people, for anyone that goes into private practice, to have at least 3 months of your income and your expenses covered, that's saved away, as if you are not going to see any clients or have any other income for 3 months, and that you have that squirreled away, as they say, for yourself. So that's an important piece to understand about going into private practice. One of the other things to think about is think about what do the state that you're in require about opening a business. Now, in a lot of states, if you're opening a profession, like most private practices are, you don't necessarily have to have a business license. They consider your professional license your license to practice. And so you don't have to do that. Now, it can vary from place to place. I would say contact your local chamber of commerce and ask them what are the business requirements and what are required for professionals when they go into business and start a business. The other thing you have to think about is how are you going to see clients and where are you going to see clients? Certainly you can see people totally online. That's very little cost involved with that. Again, the thing is to think about is where are the clients going to come from? You can't just expect to slap up a website or that sort of thing and just have people flowing into you constantly from the get-go. It takes time to build, and you have to kind of establish yourself. The other thing is if you start part-time, which I really recommend for people to get their feet wet, is you can find other therapists that might be willing to loan you some space or might be willing to let you see clients at a low cost using an established space. A lot of times, doctors' offices, churches, lawyers' offices, and that sort of thing have space that they might be willing to lease to you in the evenings and on weekends when nobody else is there. So check into that as far as that goes. The other thing that I think is really very important to have in starting a private practice is to get your website up and going. And there are tons of different ways to do that. Shout out to my good friend Daniel Fava at Private Practice Elevation. His expertise is in that, and he can be a huge help to you in getting a website established and get that going. The other thing is maybe joining directories, things like Therapy Notes, Good Therapy, those kinds of directories, I think are a good investment on the front end and helping yourself get established in your private practice. The other thing that you want to be able to start learning about is just the whole business side of running a private practice. And so understanding basic accounting, understanding how to keep your books, understanding how to manage the organizational requirements of your practice, the systems and processes you want to have in place, things like your electronic health record system, how you're going to track paperwork, how you're going to keep things HIPAA compliant. All of those things are things that you need to think about on the front end when you go into a private practice. One question I'll throw out here, a lot of people ask, well, can I make more money in private practice than working for an agency? It all depends. And it depends on where you're located and also how much time and sweat equity you're willing to put into running a practice on the front end. So those are things to think about. Thinking about, again, going back to where your referral is going to come from and what are you going to put work into on the front end to get that going. So I know this is just scratching the surface, and I'm sure this is bringing up a lot more questions for you. And so leave your questions in the comments below. And also take time to subscribe to this channel and give us a thumbs up on this particular video if you found this helpful. And I'll be talking with you again in other videos just about some of the basics of starting a private practice and things you have to consider. Take care, folks.